Okay, I do believe we are live. I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit here. Thank you for joining me. For those who are joining on the replay, thank you for joining me. This is going to be a super casual Eurorack patch lab today. We're going to check out what I've got in the system right now. And in a few moments, we're going to unpatch all of these cables and we're going to attempt to patch something from scratch today. First thing I'm going to do is try to find this stream on my channel so that I can chat if anyone tunes in. Here's what I've got going in the system right now. Hope that's not too loud. I'm going to try to find the stream on my channel. Hey Tony, hey Daniel, hey Redneck Samurai. We got Toballusion, we got Daniel. All right, thanks guys. Can you hear me? Last week, I think the overall volume level was clipping just a tiny little bit. So I've got the volume into the phone today a little bit lower than normal, I think, and I hope that'll be okay. If someone can let me know if you can hear me and if you can hear the music okay, and if you can hear me when it gets really loud. Sounds cool. Hey, Wall. Hey, we got Gaz. We got Michael. Thanks for joining up, guys. Hey, Sean. Are you guys getting any distorting or clipping on your end when we got full volume and I'm talking like this? Last week, I think we had the level a little bit too hot overall, maybe. Sounds really good. All right. Thanks, Sean. We got Oceans in Space. Thanks for joining up, everybody. I appreciate you being here with me. It's going to be a really casual stream today. We're just going to talk a little bit about what I've got in the system right now. And in a few minutes, we're going to pull all these cables and attempt to patch something from scratch. Just going to just check this out, what I've got going in the system for a little bit. All right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this patch here that I've got set up and how we're routing it and how everything is working today. We're using the Pittsburgh Modular Lifeforms SV1B today for the baseline. I told somebody that we were going to be using this today, and sure enough, we are going to be using this today. This was actually my first piece of Eurorack gear, and I definitely blame this piece of gear for a lot of these pieces of gear on the desk. Within about 5 minutes of playing with this, I absolutely knew that this was beyond a shadow of a doubt something for me and something that I needed to get a little bit deeper in. So we're using this for the baseline today. Let me go ahead and solo that out for a sec. Bring this modulation down. Bring this filter back up. Bring this ride down. Okay. Let's see here. I don't have that anywhere but here. That's on 2. Okay. So we're controlling the sequence today of the baseline using the Novation SL-MK3 MIDI controller and sequencer. I'm taking a MIDI out from this today, and I'm plugging it into MIDI Solutions Quadra through. This allows me to send MIDI directly from the controller over to the Pittsburgh modular using the little MIDI dongle here. I'm also sending a MIDI signal to the Poly-In Poly2 module, which is allowing me to send MIDI clock out to the case and keep everything in sync in time with the Novation SL-MK3 controller. I definitely want to experiment more with using this controller with the Eurorack because it has some CV and gate outputs as well that I haven't experimented with yet. Only so many hours in the day. But the cool thing about using a sequencer like this to control some of the parts in the jam or in the the patch, whatever, is that I can program different patterns. So I currently have 4 different bass lines going, and at any time, get some drums back for us. At any time, I can come over to the SL-MK3, 2, 1, and click it, and then I can change the bass line. Yeah, no Pittsburgh modular gear for you then, Walt. Hey, Sean. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Is the sound okay? Just let me know if we get distorted or clipping, or if my level is too loud or anything, and I can maybe bring the whole level down. 2, 1, 2, 3. Change the bass. I've also got a ride cymbal that I can fade in and fade out of this mix for some extra top end frequencies in the frequency spectrum. Ride cymbal. Just change that bass. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can mess with the cutoff on the Pittsburgh modular to get a little bit of different sound. Kind of tuck it back a little bit for some variation. I'm also sending a little bit of CV information to this sound. It's very subtle, but if I fade it up using this knob here, we get a little bit of extra tweakiness kind of on the bass sound. I feel like the little things add up, a little bit goes a long way. Bring this modulation back down. You can also filter the bass line down. Get it really dark in the mix so that I can fade in a high-pitched arpeggio. Kind of bring that bass line back up. 1, 2, 3, change the bass line. Hey, dropping beats, good to see you. All right, we got 15 people in the chat. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I can get this arpeggio a bit more, open up the envelope on it, open up the filter on it a little. 1, 2, 3, 4, back down. Let's talk about that as well. I've got a really neat little sonar hit in this mix in this patch. I keep saying like live jam or mix or whatever, but I guess what these really are is Eurorack patches, I think is the the correct term. Let's see here, but I got this really neat sonar sample that I can turn on and off. I've got it running through a whole lot of reverb, as you can hear here. And when I turn it off, it just sort of leaves this layer of that, reverb noise in the mix, and I just absolutely love stuff like that. I've got the snare drum and 2 hi-hat patterns being routed through the DivKids mutes module so that I can turn things on and off a little bit in real time. I've got that sonar going through a mute as well, so I can turn that sonar on and off. Got the snare here. Not really. I have to turn the volumes back up. But when the volumes are up, I can turn the snare drum on and off as well. The only thing I didn't really set up was a way to turn the kick drum on and off. So the kick drum is kind of always going in this mix. Really like being able to add this hi-hat, this ride cymbal. And I've also got some shakers, so I'll bring that ride down. I've also got some shakers that I can add, just to kind of get a little bit more of that, high-end rhythm. And they go really well when the ride comes in, which just sort of, build that high-frequency content. Yeah. We've got 17 people in the chat. All right, thanks for joining me, everyone. If you've just tuned in a few moments, we're going to be pulling all of these cables, and we're going to be patching something from scratch today. We're going to be using the Pittsburgh modular again. Not exactly sure what we're going to patch. It should be a fun little adventure. So I just kind of turn that sonar on and off every now and again and get that fade in that arpeggio. And 1, 2, 3, change the bass line. You see how this using that external sequencer to control one of the sequences is really helpful this way. I don't necessarily have a sequencer that, equals the Novation SL MK3 in the Eurorack at this time. So it's not like I can, play a bunch of patterns into it, save those patterns, and then recall those, super easily on the downbeat of the next measure per se. So having something like this definitely helps kind of extend the system and the patches for me. Last week, though, I believe it was last week, we were all in and using no external sequencers, and that went really well also. So it's just a kind of a matter of, different gear for a different day. I'm not claiming necessarily that one workflow is the way to go, because you all know that I really like all of the workflows. Down filter. Yeah, I hear you, Sean. I hear you, Sean. So here I have stopped the sequence on the SL, and we're just hearing the things that are being sequenced by sequencers inside of the rack. I've got the drums coming from a drum kit that I put together in the Expert Sleepers Disting EX Alpha. I really am a big fan of hitting the snare drum just maybe a decibel or two too loud. So check that out. Turn the reverb tail off there. Got some really punchy drums coming out of this. I've taken the hi-hat out of a separate output so that I can put an envelope on the hi-hat sound and sort of tame that a little bit. Check this out. I can get that hi-hat really thin, really tight, or I could open it up a little more. It's a very subtle difference here. but those subtle differences really add up, and a little goes a long way when you're doing subtle little things to each sound in the mix to try to get those a little more special. Let's see. I think maybe it's time to go ahead and start pulling some cables. This is a really sick patch. Hey, thanks very much, Sean. I appreciate that. All right, 16 people, and we're about 15 minutes into the stream. So I think we're going to go ahead and pull these cables today. But this can get a little bit tedious and whatnot. So I like, for those of you who have tuned in to previous Patch Labs here, I like to kind of play some music in the background as I'm doing this. So this is a live jam that I put together with 2 Digitacts on the channel. There we go, get a little volume on that. Hopefully that's not too loud. Please let me know if it is. And I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some cables.
Rich, smooth, warm, like hot chocolate.
Is that too loud or is that quiet?
Rich, smooth, warm, like hot chocolate.
Fine here. Hey, thanks, Wall. Levels are good. Thank you very much. Digital Diesel. The small MIDI loop. Hey, thanks, Tobe. Yeah, I gotta check that out a little further. I have seen that, but I haven't spent a lot of time checking it out. Thanks for that tip. Funky bass change. Yeah.
Rich, smooth, warm.
Hey, thanks, guys. I know the pulling cables part gets a little tedious, so thank you for your patience here as we continue to pull these cables. I think I'm going to leave this reverb plugged in. Save us a minute and a second here. 2, 3, and gotta break it down sometimes. Oh,
Smooth.
yeah.
Warm.
Keep those funky beats.
Rich. Smooth. Warm.
Getting close. Hey, Jovarsi, thanks for joining me. I love the Digitact, you guys. For those of you who don't know, the Digitact is absolutely my favorite instrument. It is definitely a desert island instrument for me. I have 2 of them. I absolutely love them. Let's patch something. let's see here. Um, let's see. Let me go back and get Ableton open for us real fast. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so what I like to do when I'm programming out, especially on headphones, is I like to run an audio signal out from my main mixer into my computer here so that I can run the audio signal into Ableton and use some visual aids to help me produce on the headphones. We've got FabFilter Pro Q3 on the left, which is an EQ plugin, which lets me visualize the EQ and the frequencies of what I'm working on. And then on the right here, we have Isotope's tonal balance control, which helps me balance some of the high and low frequency content on these tired ears on these headphones. Okay, what I've got, how I made that last patch rather, is I loaded up my drum and bass bonus sample pack that actually comes free to anyone who purchases my Digitac bundle. And I worked with those samples. I think we're going to go ahead and work with that same set of samples for a new patch here. But I think we'll try to patch something maybe a little bit lower in tempo today. So the first thing maybe we can do is go to this session here and change the tempo. I was at 174 beats per minute. Maybe we'll go down to like 126 beats per minute to start off with today. And so I've got like that drum kit here ready to go in the disting. Maybe we'll just use that same drum kit to get a little bit of a beat started, and then maybe we can come up with a bass line and some other melodic elements to add to that beat. So if we're using the SL as the main clock today, the first thing we'll need to do is we're running that into the poly-end poly2 module, and we're going to need to take a main clock signal from that module, and we're going to want to patch that into a multiple. That way I can send the clock signal out to all of the other sequencers and modules that require a clock signal. Hey Ed, thanks for joining me. It's really difficult to take a deep breath when the microphone is like right under my nose, so apologies for all the heavy breathing and stuff. Okay, we've got our clock signal routed to a multiple. We're also going to need a way to tell all of these sequencers when the downbeat is. So we're going to attempt to patch, let's see here, an output from a reset signal that I've already got set up into the system into another multiple. So now I can route from these two multiples, the clock signal and the reset signal, to any other device that needs that. We'll need to figure out which sequencer I'd like to use to go ahead and start programming these drums. And I think what we're going to do is start off with the D&I Pro dot sequencer today. The first thing we need to do to use a sequencer is we'll need to send that sequencer our main clock signal so that it's running at the tempo of our groove. And we'll also need to send it a reset signal so that it knows when the downbeat is when we press stop and start. Cool. What we're going to do is we're going to delete this pattern here, clear. And that should clear the bass line that I had recorded previously. Cool. Thank you for your patience as I figure all this out today. We're going to go ahead and get ourselves like something that I can use for a metronome right off the jump here. So let's take this clock signal here and patch this into a sampler so that I can just get something going on the downbeat for us to start working with here. And let's just run it out into, say, here for now. Okay, in and out. All right, cool. What we'll do is I've got like, I don't know, 180 some odd samples. The entire drum and bass sample pack that I made the live set the other, oh my goodness. Let me start over here. I'm using samples from the drum and bass live set that I put out just a couple of months ago from the pack that comes free now with my Digitac bundle. We've got those drum and bass samples loaded into the Tip Top 1 sampler and another Tip Top 1 sampler next to it. And I've also got those samples loaded into the Expert Sleepers Disting EX Alpha, which I've created a drum kit already that we're going to be using in just a moment. But this here, we'll pick a different sound. Maybe I can just find a hi-hat or something like this here. Cool. Now we've got, our rhythm to work with. Hey, Ketchup, thanks for joining me. We got 21 people in the chat. We got Scott Grant. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I appreciate you being here. These are just really, really casual patching sessions. I'm going to be patching slowly today, and I'm going to be explaining everything that I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and why I'm doing it. Let's see here. So we're going to be using the D&I Pro dot sequencer to sequence these drums. And we're going to start by sequencing out the kick drum. So we're going to take, actually, I'd like to make it so we can turn these on and off using the DivKit mutes module. So I'm going to route our CV into that and take the output from that into the first trigger here on the Disting EX Alpha. We've got our metronome basically clicking away. That'll go away in a little bit once we start getting some sounds happening here. We're going to take a left output into a little mixer that I've got here. Turn these volumes down for now. Cool. And reset all of these pans, I think. Here, we'll just make this a stereo signal. Cool. So we've got a left out and a right out into this mixer here, into the input of this mixer rather. And now we just need to take an output from the mixer over to the other case and get it into the main mix. So what we'll do, sorry about that metronome just ticking away in the background there. Take an output here. We're going to go ahead and route this right in here. Let me get a longer cable. I don't think that's any longer, actually. Okay, cool. All right. So now we've got sort of the kick drum pattern happening, but it's the pattern that I had going previously. So let's see if we can shift this around a little. Bear with me for a sec while I mess with this rhythm here. There we go. This sequencer always gives me a little bit of a hard time, and I'm trying to get better at using it. I'm not real happy with what I'm getting out of this right now. Maybe we'll add this snare and then work with the kick pattern later. So I have something to balance it off of. Ugh. That's the steps, right? Sorry about that, everyone. All right. This is why it's a little bit intimidating doing these live streams when I'm still a sort of a beginner at all of this. And this is exactly why I'm doing these live now, so that you can see some of the learning process that goes through. Let's see here. I think we're going to reassess what I'm using to trigger the kick drum and pass on using the D&I Pro dot at this time. And what we'll do instead is start using a different sequencer that I'm a little bit more familiar with using. so that we're not just struggling here on the live stream. What I'll do first is go ahead and send the clock signal into the second case so that I've got our clock signal available on the other side, and I'm going to send our reset signal over to that case as well so that I've got both of those signals available to send to another sequencer on this side of the case. And what we're going to do is dig through some cables here, and we'll go ahead and take a start and stop signal, and we're going to patch that, the main clock signal, and we're going to patch that into the Mazatron Golden Shower sequencer, which is absolutely my favorite sequencer to work with in the Eurorack environment. It's super easy to work with, and it's super easy to dial in the kind of patterns that you're looking for. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very long cable, and we're going to run an output from that Golden Shower module. We're going to run that over to the whoops. I've actually got my kick drum input right here. We don't need to run that far at all. We can go ahead and run an output directly to trigger 1 here for the kick drum. And let's see here. Just need to maybe put a cool pattern together real fast. We'll just start with that. And let's see. Cool. All right. Give me 1 second here to dial in something on this. I'm learning that on these live streams, I need to take that extra second and the beginning and make sure that we have something, decent to work with that I'm happy with. That's kind of cool. Go ahead and mute this fake metronome for now. In fact, let's go ahead and just remove this from the equation because we've got kind of a kick drum rhythm now that we can sort of follow along with. Let's go ahead and let's see here. I think we'll use a Euclidean sequencer to sequence some hi-hats. So I'm going to take our master clock signal and I'm going to patch that into a 2 HP Euclidean sequencer. And I'm also going to take our reset signal and I'm going to patch it into that sequencer so that it knows when the downbeat is. And if I start and stop the external clock, now we're sort of synced up again. So we can take an output from the Euclid and we can patch that into our hi-hat sound over here, which I believe I have coming out of outputs 3 and 4, and maybe we'll just change that today. Sample 3, output 1, 2, 3, there it is. Okay. Just put some more patterns here. There we go. Now we're getting our hi-hat coming from the drum kit that I've previously put together in the Distant EX. We'll just leave it, I think, for now with sort of playing a 16th beat, and we'll sort of try to get our snare drum into the mix. And once I've got the drums kind of a little bit together, we'll see if we can adjust some of these levels a little bit. Let's see, for the snare drum, I think we'll go ahead and use, we're going to go ahead and use my second Mazatron Golden Shower for this. So we'll just need a way to send it the main clock, and we'll need a way to actually send both of these a reset signal. So let's go ahead and patch that in from where I've got the reset signal from this case patched into a multiple so that we can send that reset signal to this side of the case. And now when I stop and start the clock, everything should sort of be in time with itself. Let's see, on pattern. I need to put in a reset signal on this pattern of 8. And it can be in C steps. It would be this step, and it would be here, and it would be the shortest gate possible. Okay, cool. And then that's, wait a minute. Bear with me for just 1 second here while I try to get this reset signal sorted for us. I actually want this not, yeah, right. Okay, we don't want it here, but we rather, we want it on this one. And that would be the shortest step possible. And I think that's going to give me the reset signal that I'm after, coming out of 8 into here on the downbeat. I don't know why it's not sticking. What am I doing wrong here? There it is. We're going to go without a reset signal again today because I'm having difficulty getting it sorted. So we're just going to pass on that. We're going to pass on any sort of reset signal, and we're going to run a little... Whoa, hey. That wasn't the way to go. What did I just do there? Let's see here. Whoops. Oh, shoot. All right, well, it didn't like that, so we'll just plug that right back in real fast. Okay, did I? Oh, for Pete's sake. What am I doing wrong here? Right, because I still have the reset signals there, but they don't actually go there. There we go. Thanks for your patience. This is why I'm doing these lives, so that you can see the struggle and join me in the fight. We learn something every day. Yeah, we do. Uh-oh. No negativity in the chat, y'all. All right. So we've got a kick drum and a hi-hat. Some patch cables on the floor. Let me grab those. Let's get this snare happening. Let's get this going. Okay. So we'll need to send a trigger signal out from the golden shower into the snare drum. Make a quick snare pattern here. Wait a minute, I'm doing this wrong. Here we go. Is it that one? Let's find out. Bear with me while I get this set up. Whoops, almost. One more up. Hold on. Just trying to find the rhythm that I'm hearing in my head. Sometimes this can take a minute, so be patient, please. Let's pop this off. Almost. And then maybe I'll move the kick drum one off it here. Let me get the kick drum a little bit different. There we go. It's kind of a funky little beat. I think we can work with that. Now, we should be able to get the Liveforms SV1B into the mix for some sort of a bass sound, because I've got it routed from the Novation SL MK3 here. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and plug that in here. I'm going to maybe go ahead and tame the volume on these hi-hats real quick. Let's see here. Sample. Outputs, gain. Here we go. Sample 3, gain. That goes down. Cool, we'll get those down in the mix a little bit. And what we'll do is go into the patterns here. We're going to clear this pattern. Right, we shouldn't be getting any sound now. Cool deal. And I am, in fact, playing it now with the keyboard here. All right, let me just mess around a little bit and see if we can, maybe I can turn the camera so you guys can see a little bit more what we're actually doing here. This is why I have to constantly reach around the desk when we're doing these live streams, because I normally have my cables over here. I'm going to wait until we get all the way back around and just try to play an 8-bar part in. We'll see what happens. In 3, 2, here we go. And now it'll just start repeating. Not the best bass line in the world, but for, a live stream, we can probably work with that. Yeah, I really like this controller actually, Travarsi. It's taken a little bit of time, to sort of come to terms with it. My biggest, I don't know, I don't want to say gripe or like issue or something, but when I was working with it, let me see if I can turn this camera a little bit more. When I was working with it the first time, trying to make like an actual finished track with it, and I was using their automation lanes and whatnot, my workflow with this is maybe a little bit different than most people's workflow. And if you go into the sessions part, you can actually use these sessions the same way that you would use like a scene inside of Ableton. So you could program a part and then click to the next session. And on the downbeat, it will switch, all 8 tracks of information that it's sending out. But if you've got automation involved and whatnot, you've literally got to go into like each of those patterns and manually kind of like re-record the automation to sort of hit the 0 point again, so that when you change to the next pattern and stuff, that the automation follows along. And I found that sort of similar to maybe writing music in a dark closed closet, because you can't really see the automation, and that sort of stuff got a little bit weird the way that I'm switching sessions. But like maybe if you've got something programmed to open a filter and then cut off, but you switched before it rolled that cutoff back down, and now you're in the next pattern but the cutoff is still open. I hope that makes any sense. So that kind of stuff was weird, but if you don't use their automation per se, then I find it really, really useful. Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. We're back in with no resets today, so I want to make sure that we're getting a decent sort of a groove happening. How's that level looking there? It looks all right. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you still hear? As we build these new grooves, the levels change from what I had set originally. Yes, the SL-MK3 has a built-in 8-track sequencer. It's their newest large MIDI controller, and that was really what drew me to this, is that you can use it really, really intensely with something like Ableton. It maps to all that stuff if like Ableton is your bag, but you can also use it with your hardware devices as a hardware sequencer. And you've got faders that you can program and lots of different knobs that you can send MIDI CC information out to your gear with, and pretty much get as deep as you'd like to go with it and your stuff. You can really customize how it works and how the routings go. Let me take a moment and make sure that our oscillator is still tuned so that we can match some other things with this. When I hit an F, hopefully we should be hearing an F from the oscillator, and it's just the tiniest little bit off, so we'll go ahead and adjust the fine tune on this. Whoops. Now when I'm pressing an F on the controller, it's registering an F. And maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll run this bass line into the Instro Tan, which is a wave shaper. maybe just get a little bit more thickness and funkiness on this bass sound. I don't know if you can hear at home what this does to the low frequency content, but it sort of just really gives a little bit of a boost. This is the Tone Wave Shaper from Instro. I don't know if you can hear at home as well, but with this drum kit that we've got, the levels are pretty well pre-mixed, and I've got that snare, maybe a decibel or two, frankly, too loud, and that's really the way I like my snares. I like my snares to hit really, really hard if we're doing broken beat stuff. Hey, is that Nils? Thanks for joining me, Nils. I appreciate you being here. 21 people in the chat. Thanks for joining up, everyone. Let's go ahead and see if we can add some more sounds to this at this time. For those of you who missed the beginning, and when I'm talking about what we're doing here, I'm using mostly samplers today. We're using the Pittsburgh Lifeforms to get the bass sound currently, but all the rest of the sounds we're going to be working with for the most part are going to be coming from a drum and bass sample pack that I've got for the Digitag. And let's see what we can find here. I'm going to take it out from this sampler, and we're just going to run that into the mixer here and start scrolling through some sounds and see what we can come up with. Now, sometimes scrolling through sounds, you lock into something awesome really quickly, and sometimes you scroll for a very long time. So let's see what happens. I'd like to find like a chord or a melodic sound, and I've got a lot of sounds in this pack, so it may take a second to find something. Bass down just a little bit. And what we can do is we can scroll through samples, just kind of press the button, see what we got, ride cymbal. There's our downbeat sound. I'm liking that. Let's see if we can get that in. An experiment here. We're going to take our main clock, we're going to patch that into the Mazatron clock divider, and then we're going to go ahead and take an output from the clock divider and patch that into the gate input of our signal. See if we can get it triggering every 4 bars. Yeah, it's a little bit off. This happens when I'm trying to get my reset signals in every time. So we're not going to do it that way. We'll do it a different way. We'll figure out a different way to trigger it. And I think what we'll do is maybe try to trigger it from the SL MK3, actually. Hey, move the camera again. Sorry about all the camera movement today, guys. Let's see if this is a thing here. I'd like to be on right, and then this is MIDI, and if we go to shift templates, I'm on channel 2, and that's coming out of this, and that's what we want, right? Yeah, and there we have it. So we can officially put that downbeat in once every 8 bars or something. We can go to, let's see here, I'm on 2, this is steps. Cool, and then we can make this an 8-bar pattern, right? 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. Here we go, hit that. I think it was off. Are we still going to get that today? We're not going to get it perfect. 3, 4, 1. Let's count this. 8, 2, 3, and no, we're in. Cool deal. So now we've got ourselves that sort of a downbeat sound, so that at the beginning of, you know, the first measure, we've got that sort of a downbeat. and that sample hitting, and that every 8 bars, 2, 3, and now we've sort of got ourselves locked into a groove starting. All right. Hey, thanks, William. I appreciate that. I figured this is the time to really get involved in showing what I'm doing with the Eurorack stuff, because I'm still a beginner at it as well. It's not like I'm super, experienced at this and not going to make any mistakes. So this is a really good time, I think, for other people to see what's actually involved in the learning process as I get a little bit better each week, hopefully. And we create, different kind of grooves and stuff each week. I think last week we did techno. This week we're doing kind of a down-tempo, broken beat, kind of a funky groove. All right, let's see here. The Pittsburgh Modular Lifeforms SV1B, let's turn this down, is a great synthesizer. And currently, we're hearing just the sine wave, and I can bring in a little bit of a saw wave on top of that sine wave. But I'm really more of a square wave guy. So we're gonna fade this saw wave down, and we're gonna bring up that square wave. You'll hear what I mean. Sort of a tubular sound almost. I don't want to say we're getting totally tubular, but we kind of are. And we've got a sub oscillator as well, for a little bit more of that growl tone in there. I think we'll go ahead and leave that sub oscillator in today. And this might be the time when I might start, really looking at my visual aids here and making sure that the low frequencies aren't, way out of, out of proportion, based on that I'm mixing on headphones and sometimes it can be a little difficult, or that my high frequency content isn't, screaming off the charts and hurting everybody's ears at home. Really important, I find, to try to get these levels sort of in check right from the beginning. I'm kind of a mix as I go sort of producer. We can also mess with the, amplitude of this sound. We can make it a real staccato sound. And we can also mess with how much it's sliding between the notes. Hear how it feels kind of rubbery and we're kind of sliding almost a little bit? They call that gliding, between the notes. We can remove that effect and just get... But I like it to move a little bit. So we turn that glide back up. Here we get a stream with it. We get a little crazy. But a little goes a long way with the glide, often referred to as portamento. Kind of got that funky electro old school flavor here with that big snare. Yeah, cool, man. Thanks for sticking with me, everyone. Let's go ahead and bring that downbeat sample back up. And what let's do is let's go ahead and route that sound through the Desmodus Versio reverb, so that instead of just kind of going bing and then trailing out, it will more go bing and then ring out and sort of create an atmosphere or a texture that's sort of happening in the air over our groove. What we'll do is, instead of routing that directly into the mixer, we're just going to route that over here into a little separate mixer that I have routed into the reverb, so that I can send multiple things if I want to into the reverb. And now, already it's sounding way more like what I had in mind. You hear how we're getting that reverb tail kind of over the mix now? Cool. All right. Let's add some more stuff. I'm going to take an output from the other Tip Top 1 sampler, and and we'll see if we can't find another sample to add to our groove here. Route that directly into the mixer. We're going to tame that downbeat for a little bit so we don't have to struggle listening to it quite so much every time we're scrolling for a sound here. This is another reason, this is a great example. This is another reason why I like to use these visual aids, is I've got a plugin that's residing on this track as well that we can bring up here at this time. This is the Mixed in Key plugin, and it'll allow me to kind of see what key things are in and really help us stay in tune per se. Of course, it's not working right off the jump. That's weird. My other plugins are still working. Okay, that's fine. I guess we'll do it by ear. Checking the level on my mixer there. It sounds like we're pretty much in key, right? I think we'll run that to the reverb though. Oh, that is hot. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Let's make kind of like a deep house, chilled house, sort of a chord groove using this sample. Maybe we'll like use a Euclidean rhythm to sort of get it going, and we'll run it through an envelope so that we can keep it nice and short and rhythmic and staccato. Yeah, let's do that. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to go ahead and get a clock signal sent over to this Euclidean sequencer. I'm not using any reset signals today, so we're just gonna not even worry about that for now. And we'll just try to get a neat pattern happening on our chord sample, but then we're gonna tame it and get it really sitting in the mix. Check this out, this will be awesome. Maybe one of these will do. Does this work? Yeah, cool. Okay, so currently we've just sort of got, you know, our chord being re-triggered often enough that it's, you know, creating just sort of a static pad sound in the mix, but that's not really what we're after. We want to create like a staccato rhythm that we can mess with and get funky with, like for house music and stuff. So what we're going to do is, instead of running this directly out into the reverb, we're going to run this out into an envelope instead. And we're going to run it into the, excuse me, oh, I'm blowing on the mic. We're going to run it into the Javelin envelope from WMD Devices. And then I'm going to take an output from the envelope, and we're going to run that into the reverb. So we're going out from the module into an envelope now, out from the envelope into the reverb. And all we need now is a signal to go ahead and trigger this envelope. And I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to use the exact same signal that we're using to trigger the sample. We're going to go ahead and remove this patch cable, and we're going to take a splitter cable. We're going to take it out from the sequencer into the gate input on the tip-top 1 sample module, but also into the gate input of our envelope. Not liking that. Okay. We'll fix that. I'm not sure why though. It's not liking that. But rather, I'll go ahead and run like the main clock signal in instead, because I just want a 16th note envelope anyhow. So we'll try that. Absolutely. We'll go ahead and turn this down. And now, let's see, I see, because we're hearing it directly into the reverb, which is creating a tail. So if I plug it directly into our mixer here, you can see that I've got an adjustment now on that chord sample where I can dial it down and turn it into more of a rhythmic sound. I'd like it to be a little bit louder, so we're going to go ahead and make that happen. Just going to route it into a module that allows me to get a little bit more volume on it here. Need a longer cable. There we go. Now it sort of can compete with these really loud drums that I've got going. So again, before it was kind of like just a static sound, triggering that sample over and over. But the envelope allows us to, create kind of a neat percussive sort of thing. And I think what would be one level cooler is if we ran this into a filter as well, so that we could get a little bit of frequency movement on the sound. So what we're going to do is, instead of running it directly into the envelope, we're going to take this and run it into a filter instead. And then we'll take an output from that filter, and we'll run the output of that filter into our envelope. So now I've got it running into a filter. Bring that volume up so you can hear it a little better. So I can filter it down. To hear that filter movement, just gives us a little bit more, variety. Things we can do with this sound in real time here. LFO that filter. You got it, William. Let's do it. William says LFO this filter, and that's exactly what we're going to do, so that it'll have a little bit of movement on it without us having to sit here and work the knob the whole time. What let's go ahead and do is let's take an LFO output from the DivKit Oct module, which is 8 LFOs, 8 triangle wave LFOs that are not synced to any tempo. You can't sync this unit to your clock, so you get more of a sort of a live and realistic and humanistic sort of feeling in your patches when you're using these LFOs. Sometimes you really want that, sometimes you might not want that. In this case, we're going to check it out. So I'm running that LFO into the IntelliGel QuadRat attenuator, which allows us to take the full width of an LFO and scale it right on down, so that we don't have the full width of movement, and we can really dial in what the LFO is doing to our filter movement. Turn the resonance quite a bit up on this. And now, I hope you can hear that. The filter is doing some moving on its own without us having to actually mess with that. And if we mess with the envelope now and bring that chord a little bit louder, you can really hear that movement. Let's get a little bit of reverb on this chord though. So instead of running it directly out into the mixer, let's go ahead and use this splitter cable that we tried to use a moment ago. And let's take an out from this into the mixer, but also an out from this into our reverb, so that now we can adjust the amount of reverb that's happening, but we can also adjust the amount of clean signal that's happening, so we can make sure that the reverb doesn't overwhelm us. guys hear that chord floating over the mix? Is it loud enough in the mix? Very nice, thanks. All right, we got Sky Tortoise Ferryman. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for sticking around, everyone. We've had a couple anomalies today, but most of those were just sequencer anomalies. That doesn't really count. Cool. Just doing a little EQ on that chord sample here. Really difficult to mix on headphones, so the visuals really help at this point. I hope that sounds okay at home. Hey, thanks for joining, Zimfella. All right. Get that bass line filtered up a little bit. I really like using the tonal balance control plugin from Isotope. This is just their default setting. It's sort of a frequency spectrum, a general frequency spectrum for what they consider to be modern bass-heavy music. And so when I mix into this, I really just want my levels to be right in the middle of this curve so that I'm not sending out too much high-frequency content or too much low-frequency content. And I find that the more I take the time to shape that in the beginning of the patch, the better the overall patch is going to sound. I don't know if you can see that at home, but when I get the level up and we take a moment and we let it play out, we're getting a pretty good representation of the frequencies here. All things considered. I'm trying to keep this little white line in the center of their little, outline there. So that's pretty good. Okay, let's make it so that we can turn some of these sounds on and off and actually do a little bit of jamming. I'm going to unplug the sequencer that we didn't end up using, and let's think about this for just a sec. We're sending our kick drum into this input here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to route these CV triggers, these trigger signals rather, into a mute module so that I can turn on and off the CV signals. Now, I want you to focus on that for just a moment. What I'm doing here is I'm routing it so that I can turn the trigger signals on and off. I'm not routing the actual audio of the sounds into the mute. That way, when I work the mute, you're not hearing actual audio levels clicking on and off or fading in or fading out in an unnatural way. When you use the mutes to mute the CV or the trigger signals instead of the audio, when you turn the sound off, the audio sort of trails off naturally and sounds a lot more even. So we're muting CV. We're not actually muting audio. So I'm going to go ahead and route that kick drum into the first mute input. And it's just the trigger signal that we're routing. I can't stress that enough. We're going to put this back into our mixer. Now, I can turn the kick drum on and off with the first mute here. There's 4 mute switches. So I can route our hi-hats and our snare into this module as well. Let's go ahead and do that at this time. So this is our snare signal. And instead of routing this directly into our drum kit, we're going to take our trigger signal. And again, we're routing our trigger signal into the mute module. We're going to take a signal from that mute and put that into the snare trigger. Now I can turn the snare drum on and off. And we can start to do a little bit of ebbing and flowing in the actual patch. Let's do the exact same thing with the hi-hats. The hi-hats are coming from is it this one? No, right, it's still over here. Duh. Okay. So it's this one. So we're going to take our trigger signal from the hi-hat. We're running that into the DivKit mute module. And then we're going to take an output from there and route that into the trigger input for the hats. So again, I'm turning the trigger signals on and off using the mute module. I'm not muting audio. And here you get really, really clean mutes this way. And 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on grid. We have that downbeat sample that's going every 8 to keep us on grid. So check it. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, mute. Five, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, and so we've got our downbeat that keeps us kind of in that rhythm, and I can start muting things on and off, and we're turning the patch into something that we can actually control. Hey, Spider, thanks for joining up. I'm not, the ES8 and the ES9, Travarsi, those are the modules that get all the signals multi-tracked into the computer. Am I correct? I don't actually have one of those. I have the poly-int, poly2 to get just MIDI between whatever sequencer I'm using, and then out into the case. Yeah, but I don't have the Expert Sleepers ES9. I did purchase pre-order the 1010 Blue box yesterday. That looks absolutely amazing for doing some multi-track recording of this stuff. I had been looking previously at expanding my hex mix with the Bifaco Hexpander. I think the timing on that 1010 Blue box is really magical because it's kind of going to do for me, I think, what that Hexpander was going to do and allow me to route some stuff into it, add a few extra effects, but most importantly, to multi-track record this. I can't wait. I'm really excited. If I miss a question and you really wanted it answered, please feel free to ask it again. I definitely want to take the time and answer any questions that I can. Let's take some time and add that ride symbol. If you've joined up on some of the other live streams, you know I like that high frequency content. We have a little bit of room to play with in the spectrum here, so let's get that going. What we'll need to do is use a sequencer for that, and I think we're going to go back to the .dni Pro for this. We're going to go ahead and try again, and I'm going to take our master clock. We're going to get this sequencer going, but we're not going to worry about reset signals or anything like that. We're just going to see if we can get a little pattern going. I'm going to go ahead and take the trigger signal from that and route that into the DivKit mutes module so that I will be able to turn this ride symbol on and off with the rest of our drums. And what we're going to do is I've got some samples in the Squarp Ramble, and we're going to go ahead and use that ride. Get that to the mixer now. Take an output from this ride sample, plug this into the mixer. There we go. Go ahead and mess with this pattern here. Cool. I can adjust the tuning on the ride now to get it in. Ooh, that'll do. And I just tuck it back in the mix there. Just gives us a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more fun stuff to mess with, and we can turn it on and off. We can do little breakdowns by bringing out the snare whenever we want. 3 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2. Turn them on now. I think what we'll do is go ahead and write a second bass line that we can switch back and forth between. So I'm going to move the camera just a little bit again. And we're going to go ahead and try to write another bass line. Tuck that ride back in a little. Cool. Might help if I'm on the right one. No, that was funny. We'll go ahead and clear this out. And then we'll put our steps. Let me just fix that real quick here. We go back into patterns and steps on this pattern here and clear these out. Then we can just, cool, and then we can make that an 8-bar pattern again, and that's on MIDI. There we go. Cool. We'll make this an 8-bar pattern. Oops, this is an 8-bar pattern. Okay, and 5. Gonna get that bass. Whoa, what do we, hold on, that's not right. Let's count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got the weirdness on that downbeat there because I messed it up. Okay. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I don't know what that's doing. Why that's, we're gonna figure that out. Oh, because it's on these, Dean. That should get us there. Thanks for your patience. It's funny when you make a mistake in a live stream, things get a little bit screwy. Then you gotta like think double time to try to figure out exactly what you were doing wrong, you know what I'm saying? Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll count this out. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, cool. 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. Gonna put some bass. Gonna put some bass. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Here we go. Let's bass it. Cool. Now we've got 2 different bass lines that we can scroll between. Save that pattern. One, 2, 3, now. Awesome. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Let's move this camera back over a little bit now that we've got 2 bass lines. Bring this ride cymbal down a little bit. And 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. We'll change the bass to have a little bit of that variation. always awesome. Now we can start bringing things in and out in real time. One, two, three, four. Bring the main level up just a tiny little bit here so that my levels look the same as they did when I was setting up the mix. Hope that sounds okay and we're not distorting. Let's bring that ride back in. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and if you're just constantly counting and you're using that downbeat, you can really stay in sync with the grooves that you're creating. One. Thanks, Ed. Yeah. We did really good with the filtered pad, I think. It's got that LFO movement happening on the filter, and we can make it more staccato, or we can make it more of a static pad by fading up the decay of the envelope that we're running it through. And we just count it out. 1, 2, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Change the bass. I've also got some shakers in the Squarp Rample that are ready to go. Let's go ahead and just bring those into the mix. We can really easily trigger them with just our master clock signal, which is just a 16th note signal. So let's see here. If I take another output from the multiple that we've routed our master clock into, and I route that into the gate input of the Squarp Rample on the slot that has these shakers on it. We can go ahead and just grab those shakers. We can patch those in, I don't know, maybe here. Cool, there's some shakers happening in the mix now to give us a little bit more of that extra high frequency content, something else that we can sort of mess with in the mix. Bring that ride in. And 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. Oh! We're just always in time with that downbeat now. Don't have any personal color coding. Literally, my color coding is just grab a cable and go at this time. I'm not really expecting that I'm going to be developing a color coding system, but you never know. Maybe in the future I will. Again, when I'm adding things in like the ride and the shakers and whatnot, if I see that it's bringing the high frequency content up too much, I can do whatever I need to do in the case to try to attenuate that, bring those levels down, or maybe run them through a filter if necessary. I find that the visual aspect of, especially when I'm working on the headphones, is just really, really useful. Still on the grid. The more pink, the more funky. You know, it's funny. My favorite color is blue, as you may, guess from the blue desk in here. But when I started working with these pink cables, I don't know. Something about them just made me feel good, so I bought some more. I'm all about feeling good these days, especially with all the stuff that's going on in 2020. If a little something makes you feel good, you run with it. You know what I'm saying? At this point, if I was working this patch, I might try to add, a couple of more bass patterns. I might try to add in some other samples or some other chord stabs from something like the Platts module or something. Let's see, we've been going for about an hour and a half. We've got 24 people that are still joining me. Yeah, red is nice, Drovarsi. I like the way that yours looks with just that clean red. Absolutely. If I had enough pink, that's probably all I would be using at this time as well. I never know how long to keep these sessions going, or I'm going to keep doing these every week, and I don't really want to bore everyone, especially since I'm sort of a beginner. But I think we're going to go ahead and push that next step and see if we can't maybe add another chord sound in coming out of the Platts module. I believe that all I would need to do to make that happen is to go ahead and see if we can't get this module in tune. We're working in the key of F minor right now, so maybe I can do that. Bear with me while I attempt to tune this module here. Looking pretty good, actually. All right. Got that tuned to an F now. And let's see here. I'm gonna need a longer cable to route this. Let's see if we can just hear this in the mix already and see what we've done. I would like that to be an octave lower, so we'll see if we can't make that happen. It's tuned to F3, but what I want it to be tuned to F2. I'm using the Mordex data here as a tuner. Platts module, unfortunately, doesn't have a fine tune. It only has a coarse tune. So it's a little bit more difficult to tune than something like the Braids module, which I'm also using a lot. But that looks like it's going to be pretty good. Let's just hear that now? Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got the Platts module tuned now, and we've got an F minor chord coming out of the module, and it sounds pretty much in tune and gelling with the rest of our mix. But I don't necessarily want just an extended pad sound. We're going to try to do some sort of a interesting rhythm of some sort, and let's see about that. Let's go ahead and use another row from the DNI.Pro sequencer, and we're going to go ahead and run that output from that into the trigger input of the Platts module. And I'll just need a way to route the module now so that we can hear it. So I'm going to route this. It's going to need a longer cable. Go. Still going to need a longer cable. How about one of these? There's a rhythm already. Ooh. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Let's go ahead and what we'll need to do is currently it's triggering out like a long note. So we can adjust the sort of envelope that's built into the Platts module and get it a little bit tighter sounding. See how it's a little more staccato now and not ringing out as much? That's a lot more what I'm going for. Definitely got our sound in key. That's nice. All right. So the bass line is coming from the Pittsburgh Modular Lifeforms SV1B. The new chord is coming from the Beautiful Instruments Platts module. And the original chord is just a sample. Now we're hearing the shaker. Bring that shaker down. So we're hearing the first chord moving from the automation that we put on the filter cutoff. I can still adjust the envelope on this. Can't lock into the rhythm again. Trying to get that new chord a little bit louder in the mix. There it is. And we're locked into the groove and we're jamming. This is what I've really been interested in creating since the beginning of my Eurorack journey. Something of a groove box that I would be able to start ebbing and flowing. We spent about an hour and 15 minutes patching this up from scratch, and we've definitely got a groove that with just a little bit more work, we could definitely make into some sort of a full jam. Maybe make a few more bass patterns. 2, 3, hit it. I might go through and run a few more things through like filters or external modules that would allow us a little more like flexibility and movement over some of the sounds. So here's our new chord stab. This is coming from the Platts module. But it's still just kind of a static sound. It doesn't actually change at all. So maybe we could take some modulation and run it into there so that it does change and adds a little bit of life and movement to the sound. We could grab like another LFO from the DivKit Oct module, which is 8 triangle LFOs that are not synced to tempo. We could go ahead and run that into the Quadrat attenuator so that we now have control over the width of this LFO. And we could maybe route this into the morph feature on the Platts module. We could maybe turn this up a little bit. We've got a little bit of movement happening now. So you hear how the chord is starting to change just a little bit in the timbre, in the sort of the way that it sounds, you know. Let's do a little bit more routing to that exact same chord, shall we? Let's take another LFO from the DivKit Oct module and run that into the IntelliGel Quadrat again so that we have control over how wide the LFO is, how much movement it's sending to our sound. Let's go ahead and patch this into the timbre of this sound. And assign a little bit of movement there. Now we've got, exactly. We've got some movement happening on the Platts module. Let's make it a little bit more of a staccato sound. More of a percussive, stabby type of sound. We blend it with that other chord stab. Get that cool rhythm stuff happening. But now there's movement happening on the first chord because our LFO is moving the filter cutoff, and there's movement on our second chord because we have 2 LFOs assigned to some modulation. Bring up that ride cymbal. Bring up the rest of our tracks here. Hear how that snare is just punching through the whole mix? It's maybe like a decibel or two too loud in the mix. That's really where I like my snares to sit. I really want it to just pop out. I was a drummer, very first and foremost. I started playing drums when I was about 5. So that explains, like, you know, my love of rhythms and my love of really glitchy beats and big, fat snare drums. I used to actually break drum. I'm kind of a little guy, but I used to break drumsticks really often behind the drum kit because I was a really aggressive drummer, and I really like to whack those drums, if you know what I mean. We're probably going to call it. We've been doing this for about an hour and 40 minutes. We've got a really fun little groove created here. They were able to do some movement and ebb and flow with. from scratch again today. We only had that one little bit of a hiccup and anomaly using the dot sequencer from D&I Pro. It's a Euclidean sequencer or an XOX style sequencer where you can kind of punch in the notes on the 16-step one-bar grid, and I have a little bit of difficulty just trying to switch between the modes on this sequencer so far. But we did end up with using it, and we've got 2 of our tracks being sequenced from it. We can turn stuff on and off in real time. We've got these cool shakers that we can bring out. One, two, three, four. I'm a little bit off, but that was pretty close. All right. So I think we're going to call it this week. I really appreciate everyone joining me, and we're going to be doing these every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Just super casual patch labs. I'm sorry that everything is so spread out at this time. I'm working on an all-in-one solution that's going to go right here. It's definitely going to happen. I've done all of the legwork, and that's now in progress of being custom built. So I believe it's probably going to be a month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months. But in a few months, there will be an all-in-one solution here holding all of the modules so that I can get the camera right in there. And on these patch labs, we can have a little bit more fun as to what I'm actually doing with the modules. Yeah, I really like this one. This one sounds really nice. These chords. All right, we're going to call it today.